Welcome to the NBAV podcast. Welcome back to NBAV, the NBA Avenue podcast. We've been talking for a little while about how when it comes to this point in the season, you start to get the A-side matchups versus the B-side matchups, where a lot of the teams are already out of it. There's only about 15 games to go in the league. And that means that when you have the A-side against the B-side, more likely than not, the games are going to go exactly as you expect, with the B-side not having anything to play for and with the A-side having everything to play for. And if anything, not only do the B-side not have what to play for, but they even have what to not play for, because winning games may actually disincentivize. They may actually move the team in the wrong direction in terms of their draft pick. Not to say that players think that way. Players are trying to play and players are trying to win. But more often than not, the team that's shown through 80% of the season that they are the better team by 20, 25 games are going to show that they're going to beat the lower team more often than not. So that's really what we've started to see. And as we can recap, Friday and Saturday games, the Heat got the first of their two games against the Detroit Pistons, and the Heat are going to have to win both of them, and they started off the right way. They didn't blow out the Pistons, but they did beat the Pistons, and that's really all that matters. The Suns beat the Hornets. Another one that we expected it. We knew what was going to happen. The Suns took care of business. The Orlando Magic did the same thing. They beat the Raptors by 10 on Friday. And there you go, the first three games of the weekend, you have the three victories, boom, 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 the A-side, A-side, A-side beating the B-side. Then you had the one game on Friday, which was actually pretty interesting, and that was the Clippers going to New Orleans to face off against the Pelicans. Now, why is this game interesting? Well, for a couple of reasons. Granted, James Harden didn't play in this ball game for the Los Angeles Clippers, but why this game is so interesting is because it's not just a game for seeding, but it's actually a game where you are getting a preview of the first round matchup that may come to be between the Clippers and the Pelicans. Currently, you have the Los Angeles Clippers. They're the 4 seed, and they are 3.5 games behind the 3 seed. So there's a nice little cushion between the Timberwolves and then the Clippers in 4. Then you have the Pelicans in 5. And then you have the Suns 2 games behind the Pelicans in 6. And not only that, but the Suns have one of the toughest schedules in the entire NBA for the remaining 15 games on the season. So that bodes very well for the Pelicans to stay in the 5th seed, the Clippers to stay in the 4th seed. And even if the Clippers and Pelicans were to swap positions, that would still be the first round matchup. With the 4-5, it doesn't really matter who's in 4 and who's in 5. That's the matchup that you're going to have. It's just a matter of home court. So currently, the Clippers are in 4, the Pelicans are in 5, and the Clippers have the 1.5 game lead on the Pelicans. So that makes this game a lot more interesting because you're getting insight. You're getting a window into what that potential playoff series could look like. So like we said, the Pelicans were able to beat the Clippers, and the Clippers were playing without James Harden, so you think maybe it doesn't matter too much. But what we learned in this game was that Zion is able to dominate against Zubac inside consistently, play after play after play after play. As long as Zion was in the game at the same time as Zubac, he was able to just destroy him at the rim. And Zion, the best part of his game is his touch inside. Forget about the dynamic dunking ability. He doesn't need that. Zion does not need to throw down emphatic dunks in order to put his imprint on the game, because his touch is so good around the basket. Anytime he gets the ball even within a certain distance from the hoop, even though he's not necessarily the tallest big man, he has a knack for creating the space that's needed and the lift and able to get the rolls, and he has really, really good touch around the basket. And in addition to that, where he's able to play point forward, and as long as he's not turning the ball over, just keep letting him operate in that space. He gets a lot of good plays running to the basket, and occasionally he's even able to throw a creative pass. He had a good bounce pass in this game where he threw the ball into the corner and they were able to get a three off it. He also had some good plays from Alvarado there, but again, another thing to remember here is that this game was at the Smoothie Center, so this was in New Orleans. So where you have the role players, and you have a lot of players like Jones who were really having their moment with the crowd, and Zion plays into the crowd a lot as well, as does Larry Nance and many of the other players on this New Orleans team. You have the guys playing better at home. So perhaps this would be a series where the games on the road for New Orleans would be a little tougher, and you might see the Clippers win most of the games in their building, and the Pelicans win most of the games in their building. Would certainly be an interesting game. But it's a series where not only is Zion going to have the advantage inside and be able to score consistently against the Clippers on the interior, but it's also a series where the athleticism goes very heavily in the direction of the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans are the younger team, and this is really how it's going to be, really, no matter who the Clippers play against. The Clippers will kind of, no matter who the Clippers face, the Clippers will probably be the older team, where their top three guys are Leonard, Harden, and Paul George. And there was a play in this game where the ball was on the ground right near the end of the game, and Kawhi Leonard just saw it there, and he was not going to dive and try to get on the ball. And Paul George is not going to dive in those situations, and James Harden is not. They've played too many years, and their bodies are too brittle, and they're not going to take that kind of risk. Kawhi Leonard will play great defense when he's upright, and he's not ready to dive on the ground like all of these guys are on New Orleans, and like they should be, because when you're the younger team, you have to take advantage of being the more athletic younger team. That's what you have to do, and that's an advantage. That's an area where New Orleans has a clear edge over the Los Angeles Clippers. So we really gain quite a bit of insight where you have twofold. You have the younger team who's gonna scratch and claw their way for everything, and you also have a team where Zion is a mismatch going up against New Orleans, going up against the Clippers, and particularly against Zubac. So a very interesting series, and you have to really give some kudos to New Orleans for being able to hold on to this fifth seed the entire way. Over the last 10-15 games, they've been really, really good. And we can see exactly how good they've been over the last 10 games. I could tell you right now because they always show it. And it's they're 7-3 in their last 10. And they've done a great job holding off Suns, Kings, and Mavericks below them. Really, just an absolutely phenomenal job to hold on to that fifth seed. You have to be very, very pleased if you are a Pelicans fan right now. They've beat all the bad teams, and then they're even beating some of the good teams. Then you have the Nuggets taking care of business against the Spurs, and you have the Jazz beating the Hawks in a game that nobody really will care about. And that takes you to the Saturday action. And what was very concerning about the Saturday action is the Cavaliers go up in the first game, and they just get torched by the Houston Rockets. And we highlighted a bit of the Ewing theory going on with the Houston Rockets, where Alperen Şengün goes out, and the Rockets just keep winning games without him. So it's a little bit interesting. It's not to say, of course, that, the whole point of Ewing theory is, it's not to say that the Knicks were better without Patrick Ewing, but it's an interesting sample size where you see game after game after game where when Ewing didn't play, the Knicks were winning games. Very interesting. And here you have the same thing for the Rockets, where Alperen Şengün, who was the brightest spot on the floor for the Rockets for this entire season, he goes out, and they really have nothing to play for, and yet they just keep winning and winning and winning. And now they've won their fifth game in a row against the Cleveland Cavaliers. But what's really concerning from the Cavaliers side of this is that how many buckets did they give up at the hoop? How many buckets did the Cleveland Cavaliers give up at the hoop with Jarrett Allen in the game? A ton. There were so many baskets inside scored by the Houston Rockets, and it really just looked like the Cavaliers didn't understand how to defend. You had many plays where Jarrett Allen was walking out to the 3-point line to help defend pick and rolls and to help close out on 3-point shooters. And Houston, a very young team, was able to take advantage with back cuts. They were able to take advantage with positioning, and you had just bucket after bucket after bucket at the hoop when Jarrett Allen was in the ball game. And there was a lot of confusion and a lot of wayward glances from Niang to Jarrett Allen, and it just seems like they really haven't run enough practices with those two down low. and they just had no idea how to stop the Rockets of all teams. The Rockets, the youthful Rockets, the guys teams. They're the team that you're talking about. Jalen Green playing AAU basketball. They have Jabari Smith, super young. They have Thompson, right, who just super young, and they are able to consistently, methodically work the ball inside and score against Jared Allen. And there was even a play in this game where Jock Landale easily got position off of Jared Allen and scored, and that's really worrisome. Because if you are not able to stop a team like the Houston Rockets from running plays and just easily getting the ball inside and scoring when your big man is in the game, what are you going to do in the playoffs? Just a very, very worrisome look today from the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have been playing their worst basketball for a while. They had a really good game in their previous one where you kind of saw what they could look like at their best. And here you have a game where they look like at their worst, where you have a game where Mitchell and Garland are both in there, and they just get blown out by the Rockets in the first half, and that was it. The game was never a game from that point on. They got blown out in the first half, and then you could have scrapped the second half, and everyone could have gone home early and had some pizza and had some ice cream, and that would have been totally okay with everybody because the second half was totally meaningless. So quite an embarrassing loss for the Cleveland Cavaliers, getting blown out by the Houston Rockets. And what do we have in the other games? Let's just run through it. You have the Pacers handling business against the Brooklyn Nets, and we'll look at the standings soon to see how that impacts everything. You have the 76ers beating the Charlotte Hornets, taking advantage of a game where the Sixers actually can win because you're playing Charlotte. So good job there by the Sixers trying to stay above water here in the absence of Embiid and trying to slow the free fall. Then you have the Pelicans going back-to-back and handling on the first night, where the Pelicans handled the Clippers. They get a much easier break the second night at home, and they beat the Portland Trailblazers by 19. So there's another 2 victories in a row there, back-to-back nights, back-to-back wins for the Pelicans in their home building. Then you have the Chicago Bulls beating the Washington Wizards by the same, that's 29 point victory, 127-98. So a big victory there, easy work over the Washington Wizards. You have the Thunder beating the Grizzlies by 6 in Memphis. And then you have the most interesting game of the night, or one of the most interesting games of the night, where you have the Warriors against the Lakers. Now, why is this so interesting? It's because the Warriors and the Lakers have been waffling back and forth the entire season, the 9 and 10 spot. And there was a point a couple of games ago where Steph Curry tweaked the ankle and he went out, and you thought the Lakers have been ahead of the Warriors in the 9 seed for quite a bit of time. And it just looks like we're finally, now Curry's going out. How are the Warriors ever going to get back in it to potentially move in front of the Lakers? And you thought, yeah, this was the nail in the coffin. The Curry injury was the nail in the coffin. That was how we described it, where the Warriors are done trying to move up. Yes, you'll have to be resigned to getting Curry back in time for the playoffs and taking your chance as the 10 seed, going to play in Los Angeles, where this game actually took place, and trying to upset the Lakers, who are going to be the seed above you, and they're going to be in their home building, and the Warriors are going to be on the road. Miraculously, the Warriors are able to win a couple of the games that they played without Steph Curry. And now that Steph Curry comes back, he looks like his usual self, and he did a phenomenal job in this game of not just scoring from 3. He really set up his 3-point game with his 2-point game, and he was able to play off of guys like Reeves and whoever else was defending him. And whenever he was able to get somebody overcommitting on the 3, he was able to move the ball inside. He was able to dribble his way inside and get all the way to the hoop. And you would think that at some point along that road of Curry dribbling the ball from 3-point range all the way up to the basket, you would think that the traffic would inhibit him from scoring. But no, time and time again in this game, Curry was able to get all the way to the basket and score in traffic, where you'd think that he would be at a height disadvantage. But Curry, in many ways, looking like a big man on the floor in the way that he was scoring the basketball. And then he was able to also do his typical extending the range, 25 feet, 26 feet, and scoring a barrage of 3-pointers from all over the floor. And then you also had Draymond Green, just a menace whenever he gets the ball in that foul line range. He's so dangerous. And that connection that he developed with Kuminga, which started about 25, 30 games ago, has now hit the fully formed point where they have established that they are super dangerous in that territory with Kuminga off the back cut. And Kuminga started off the game very strong. He hit a bunch of shots from the right side, from 3, from 2, and then he was also able to, late in the game, get all of those easy buckets off of the Draymond Green action, where that extra pass that the Warriors do for those easy dunks, time and time again, just phenomenal. So what you're going to get now that the Warriors won this game and they've evened it up between them and the Lakers, where the Warriors are 35 and 31, the Lakers are 36 and 32. So the Lakers have played another 2 ball games. So really the power is going to shift over to the Warriors, where in those extra 2 ball games they can win them. And you have the Warriors winning this one, you have the Lakers losing their last 2, and now those 2 teams are tied. And you would have to say that the Warriors are now in the driver's seat, especially where the injuries now shift over to the side of the Lakers. Anthony Davis got injured in this game, and we have to see what's going to be the deal with Anthony Davis the rest of the way. Is he going to miss any time? Because he's a brutal, brutal injury. The Lakers don't have a lot of depth at that center position right now. You're going to have to be relying on Jackson Hayes and others to make up for Anthony Davis, and the Lakers are just not a very deep team. They've had to play the entire season without a guard who they were pretty excited to get their hands on in Gabe Vincent, and now it doesn't look like he's ever coming back. And if you lose Anthony Davis, who's been healthy for the entire year, just how much worse does that make that for the Lakers? Well, it makes it a lot worse, because at least 50% of the time you can rely on Anthony Davis to have really big games for you, and you take away that chance when he's not in the ball game, and now you become even so much more reliant on LeBron James, who's at an advanced age. And this is in a year where it's not like they've been a top 4 or 5 seed when Anthony Davis has been on the court. They're a 10 seed, even though Anthony Davis has had one of the healthiest seasons of his career. Now you take him out of the equation, how much worse will they be? It's hard to say, but it definitely doesn't bode well for them. And now you're looking at maybe the Warriors getting that home court in that one game against them. But one thing I can say for sure is that the 9-10 play-in game between the Warriors and the Lakers is going to be phenomenal, sensational. It's going to be such an exciting game. And then what's ironic is that the team that loses, the team that wins that game, the team that moves on to play the second play-in game, is probably going to lose on the back-to-back. And then the Warriors and the Lakers will both be out of there in one fell swoop. You're going to have whichever team wins that first one, they're probably going to lose the next night in the second play-in game, and then both of the teams will be out very quickly, one after another. But it's that first game is going to be must-watch television. It's going to be absolutely incredible between the Warriors and the Lakers. Now, you also had a really bizarre action in this game where there were maybe 6 or 7 back-to-back plays where they tried to start the game, and there was just malfunction with the shot clock. And yeah, it doesn't really matter if unless you're watching that game live and you were just getting fed up and you wanted to go to bed because you're on the East Coast. Okay, I understand that. But otherwise, all's well that ends well. And it's not like this would have swung the game for the Lakers anyway. The Lakers were most likely losing. They were down 7 or 8 points at the time, and that was probably what was going to happen either way. So I don't want to hear any narrative about that affecting the game. The Warriors were the slightly better team for the entire way, and that was just the way it went, and it doesn't help the fact that the Lakers didn't have Anthony Davis in this one. So let's see. Do we have anything else to talk about in that game? I guess Chris Paul was okay. What you've seen for the Warriors down the stretch here in the season is that they've ended up not relying on Podziemski very much. So where the entire season you had Podziemski showing a pretty strong season for the rookie, now that things have started to settle down the stretch, you haven't seen... Podziemski played big minutes, but you haven't seen that same sort of production. He had 5 points and 3 rebounds. 5 points, 3 assists, and 5 rebounds in 35 minutes of action there from Brandon Podziemski. So just not the kind of production that you would have expected, but now as things go down the stretch, you're not seeing as much from him, and you're not seeing any game time, any time on the court from Dario Saric. He was a guy who the Warriors brought in. You think, yeah, smart player, typical like Warriors fringe of the roster signing. But guess what? Trayce Jackson-Davis is a part of this team. No Kevon Looney tonight. Not sure what the deal is with him. Maybe he's hurt. But you have the Warriors going with Kuminga now getting a ton of playing time. Andrew Wiggins playing 30 minutes tonight. Then Draymond. Podziemski still played 35 minutes, even though it wasn't the most productive 35. And then you have Steph Curry playing over 30. You have Klay Thompson playing over 30. Trayce Jackson-Davis playing 21 minutes. Chris Paul with 19 off the bench. And you got a short 7 minutes from Gary Payton. So even on a night when Kevon Looney doesn't even make it to the court, you don't have any minutes from Dario Saric, and you have Brandon Podziemski, who you'd have to think maybe in the playoffs it's going to be more minutes for Payton, less minutes for Podziemski. So you're starting to see things sort of round out as we thought they would. Chris Paul is back. That means that you're going to see more Chris Paul minutes, less Podziemski minutes. And then when you have the playoffs actually rolling around, you'll probably see even less Podziemski minutes. So Warriors fans, you can kind of start cooling off a little bit on Saric, which I guess you never really were that excited about him. He hasn't really had played well at any point in the season, but you were very, very excited about Podziemski, and now you kind of got to cool it off, and the team is going to settle into more of the veterans as you start to really get into this playoff territory. The Warriors can try to make one last push to get out of this double play-in scenario and try to make it maybe just a one-game play-in scenario. So you'll have two cracks. Instead of having to win 2 out of 2 games to make it into a real playoff series, you'll have 2 cracks and only need to win one of them to make it into that same series. So that's what the Warriors are going to make a push for here in these final 15 games, although the Warriors have played a little bit less games. Let's see, the Warriors have played, they're 35-31, which means that they played 66 games. So that means that they have 10 games would make it 76, and then 4, 5, 6. So that means that the Warriors have 16 games to go on the season, where I believe the Lakers only have 14. So 16 games to go on the Warriors season, and they've played pretty strongly out inside the last 20 games. So maybe you hope that in the last 16 they'll continue to play at a high level, and they'll make one last push to move from the 9 seed to the 8 seed, and this is their final stretch right here. The Timberwolves handled the Jazz. They looked really good tonight, and the Knicks against the Kings. This is really the last game of the evening, and it's the last game that we want to talk about. But what you have here is just a very intriguing game, because you have a team in the Eastern Conference like the Knicks. You have a team in the Western Conference like the Kings. And this is a game where the matchup between the two teams is so interesting, because if these teams could potentially face off in the playoffs, it would be what a great series. I mean, the Kings against the Knicks, they're two scrappy teams. The Knicks are the less talented offensive team, but they are just so tuned in and dialed in on the defensive end, whereas the Kings are a more athletically, or I shouldn't say athletically, but they're a more talented offensive team, but they don't have that hard-nosed, big game type of energy to them like the New York Knicks have, where the Knicks were able to, time and time again in this game, they were able to come up with offensive rebounds and create extra possessions. So you were seeing, can the Kings execute better on the offensive end and be the smoother team against the Knicks, who are trying to wear you down, take the extra possessions, be the tougher team, rebound the ball better, be a better defensive team. And the defensive intensity of the Knicks really won out against the Kings tonight. And in a game where you have Domantis Sabonis in the prior game, where Domantis Sabonis beat Anthony Davis again. And Domantis Sabonis, in one of the weirdest, wildest statistics that you've ever heard in the NBA, Sabonis is 10-0 against Anthony Davis, where you'd think that Anthony Davis is the better, more impactful player, not against Domantis Sabonis. Sabonis winning 10 straight, 10-0 against Anthony Davis, the Brow. So there you have it. And then versus where we have in this one, the total opposite. You watch how Isaiah Hartenstein just demolishes Domantis Sabonis in a game where Sabonis scores 3 points in the third quarter and 0 points in the fourth quarter. This was the Domantis Sabonis, and I tweeted this out during the game, or right after the game, where this was the Domantis Sabonis who got blanked by Draymond Green in that playoff series last year, where Bill Simmons always talks about how you only have 2 or 3 guys you're able to throw out really big salaries at on your team. So basically, and I agree with him on this, where you have only a couple of players you're able to give out most of your salary to. And if you're the Sacramento Kings, then you're giving most of that salary between your big dogs are De'Aaron Fox, Domantis Sabonis, and then I guess Malik Monk, or in their case they divvy it up also a little bit to Harrison Barnes. You need Domantis Sabonis to really, really, really produce for you. And 21 and 14 in 40 minutes is really not going to do it. Especially where all of those points come in the first half, or virtually all of them. 18 out of 21 of his points came in the first half. You need him to play very well down the stretch. And hey, it's great that you beat Anthony Davis 10 times in a row. It's spectacular, but you're not playing Anthony Davis every game. And it's not really acceptable for you to go up against Isaiah Hartenstein and get crushed. And you were seeing Domantis Sabonis come up short. You were seeing him not being able to deal with Hartenstein, where Hartenstein was able to drive in on him, get fouled, complete the three-point play. And Hartenstein was the monster. Hartenstein was the hammer, and Domantis Sabonis was the nail. That was really how it looked tonight, where you see a complete flipping of the switch from the previous game. And the Kings' Achilles heel in this one was there was a point in this ball game, in the second half, in the third quarter, where, or maybe even in the fourth quarter, where you have the Kings' second unit in the ball game. And the second unit for the Kings consisted of, for the second unit for the Knicks, consisted of Josh Hart, Isaiah Hartenstein, and no Jalen Brunson, but you had Bogdanovich and you had Burks in the game with Deuce McBride. So that's a point in the game where, especially when you have guys like Monk and you have guys like Fox, and for part of that you even had Sabonis in the ball game, for you not to take advantage and throttle the Knicks when Brunson's not on the floor is completely unacceptable. And you had a stretch where the Knicks were not able to score for the first few minutes when that lineup was out on the floor for them. And you had McBride not being aware of the shot clock. You had a couple of plays where the Knicks just couldn't get a shot off, and the Kings don't take advantage of that, and they're not scoring on the other end. And then eventually what you have is the Brunson able to get extended rest, and not only that, Burks is able to get a couple of shots to go. Bogdanovich is able to get shots to go. And then you bring Brunson back into the game, and they score a bucket or two, and now suddenly that went from a point in the game where the Kings should have capitalized and quickly moved in front and been in the fourth quarter with a lead that they're trying to protect. And it doesn't go that way. It goes completely the contrary, where you bring Brunson back in the game, and you're on a 7-0 run or an 8-0 run, and now the Knicks are the ones protecting the lead, something which they did very well in this ballgame. And then down the stretch, that wasn't the chaotic, up and down the floor Kings type of game. It was the methodical and wearing you out Knicks version of the game. And Isaiah Hartenstein showed his smarts. He had an opportunity to get an easy dunk at the end of the ballgame, but what did he do? No, he passed the ball out, and the Knicks were able to kill more time off of the clock. And there were many, many players in this league, Domantis Sabonis included, Jusuf Nurkic included, many centers who would have just liked to dunk the ball home and assumed, hey, we're probably going to win the game anyway, so what do I really need to take off more time from the clock? Let's just take the 2 points and pad the stats. No. Smart basketball, and that's the way the Knicks played. And this is just a phenomenal victory for the Knicks because you're showing that as you've gotten your team healthier, and OG Anunoby didn't have a great game, but him being on the court helps them a lot, and the Knicks able to get a victory against a real playoff team in the Sacramento Kings. So just a phenomenal victory for the Knicks, and let's take a little bit of a look at the standings to see just how this one impacted everything. So you obviously have the Celtics way at the top, and they have the easiest schedule in the NBA the remainder of the way, so it's just going to be easy sailing for them, smooth sailing. And then you have the Milwaukee Bucks at 2, the Cavaliers lost, so they're firmly in 3, a game back, the Knicks still in 4, the Magic a game behind the Knicks in 5, the Pacers able to get their victory, so they're in 6, the Sixers got a win, so they're still in 7, and the Heat are in 8, but they're ready to snatch that 7 spot from the Sixers and keep trying to climb. Then the 9 and 10, Bulls and Hawks, like they've been for the last while. Then in the Western Conference, Thunder and Nuggets even at the top, going back and forth there. The Timberwolves only 1 game behind those two, so this has been a great 3-team race trying to get that top spot in the Western Conference. You have the Clippers in 4, the Pelicans in 5, beating the Clippers in their last one, and things are heating up, heading towards that eventual matchup between the Clippers and the Pelicans. The Suns still in 6, who have a very tough schedule the remainder of the way. So it'll be interesting to see if the Suns can hold on to that. But the Kings only half a game back of the Suns, even though they lost this one. So the Kings, Suns fighting it out. The Kings have an easier schedule the remainder of the way, so maybe the Kings can move ahead of the Suns. And then you have the Mavericks in 8, and then you have the Warriors and Lakers tied in the 9-10 spot, each of them at the same virtually the same winning percentage of 53%. So a tough year for the Warriors, tough year for the Lakers, but you're going to definitely get probably that 9-10 matchup between them, and that will be just a phenomenal one-game play-in scenario with Curry and LeBron not going at each other in the finals, but at least we'll get this strange play-in type game where, hey, it'll still be an awesome matchup and one that everyone will be looking forward to. As always, you can follow us at NBAV, that's NBAVE, on social, and you can email the show at nbavenue@yahoo.com with your questions and comments. As always, we are your source for a great time every time. And until next time, we are out.